The handcuffs were already on his wrists when the detective read him his rights. Emeka Okafor stood in the middle of the Enugu Central Police Station, the same station where, just 6 days earlier, he had walked involuntarily, sat down across from an officer, and reported the murder himself. He had given them everything. The name of the victim. The location of the body. A full account of what he said he had witnessed. He had been so calm. So composed. So willing to help. And now here he was, in the same building, on the other side of the desk, being told he had the right to remain silent. How does a man end up arrested for the very crime he reported? How do you walk into a police station as a witness and walk out months later as the prime suspect? How does one mistake, a single, small, almost forgettable mistake, unravel everything? Welcome to Stories by the King, where we tell the stories that remind us that the truth always finds a way out. If this is your first time here, subscribe and turn on your notifications, because every story we tell is one you will not want to miss. To understand what happened, we must go back. 6 days. That was all it took. 6 days from the moment Emeka Okafor walked into the police station as a concerned citizen to the moment they placed him under arrest. The victim's name was Chidinma Osei, 29 years old, a secondary school teacher from the Uwani district of Enugu, beloved by her students, known in her neighborhood for the way she kept her compound spotlessly clean and always had something warm cooking on the stove. She had a younger sister named Ada, who had traveled down from Abuja the moment she got the phone call and had not stopped crying since. Ada was in the police station the day they arrested Emeka. She had come in to ask for an update on the investigation, the way family members do when the waiting becomes unbearable. She was standing near the entrance when they brought him through in handcuffs, and the officers say she stopped mid-sentence and just stared. She did not cry. She did not shout. She simply looked at him with an expression that the duty sergeant would later describe as someone who had suspected the truth all along but had prayed she was wrong. Emeka did not look back at her. Outside the station, word was already spreading through the neighborhood. Chidinma's death had shaken the entire community. She was the kind of woman people called a good person without having to think about it. And now the man who had reported her death was the man they were charging with causing it. The community's grief cuddled into rage almost overnight. People who had praised Emeka for coming forward, for being civic-minded, for doing the right thing, now felt a particular kind of betrayal. As if he had used their admiration as a shield. As if their praise had been part of his plan. But here is the thing about Emeka Okafor, he had not planned any of this. That was the tragedy at the heart of the story. He was not a mastermind. He was not a cold, calculating killer who had walked into the police station with a carefully constructed alibi. He was a frightened man who had made a desperate decision, and then, in the middle of trying to cover it up, had made one small, stupid, almost unbelievable mistake. And that mistake had led here, to handcuffs, to a holding cell, to Ada Osei's eyes burning a hole through his back as they walked him down the corridor. To understand the mistake, you have to understand the decision. And to understand the decision, you have to go back further still. We must go back. Emeka Okafor was 34 years old and worked as a logistics coordinator for a mid-sized company that moved goods between Enugu, Onitsha, and Port Harcourt. It was steady work. Not glamorous, not particularly well-paying, but steady. He had a small apartment in the Akora layout area, a second-hand Toyota Corolla that he kept meticulously clean, and a habit of sending money home to his mother in soccer every month without fail. By every outward measure, Emeka was a responsible man. What nobody knew, what he had told almost no one, was that for the past 8 months, he had been in a relationship with Chidinma Osei. It had not started as anything serious. They had met through a mutual friend at a birthday gathering in Wudi, and what began as the occasional exchange of numbers had slowly, without either of them fully intending it, become something more. Chidinma was warm and funny and direct in the way that made you feel she was the most honest person in any room. Emeka was drawn to that. The problem was Emeka's other life. He had a fiancée. Her name was Blessing, and they had been engaged for 2 years. She lived in Lagos and was planning to relocate to Enugu after their wedding, which was scheduled for the following April. Their families had met. Introductions had been done. The date was set. Emeka had told himself, the way people in these situations always do, that the relationship with Chidinma would end naturally before it became a problem. He would let it fade. He would be gentle but distant. It would dissolve on its own. But Chidinma was not the kind of woman who accepted distance without an explanation. And 3 weeks before she died, she had found out about Blessing. She had not found out through a dramatic confrontation. She had not hired anyone or done anything conspicuous. A friend of hers had seen Emeka at a jewelry store in Independence Layout, selecting what was clearly a woman's ring, and had told her. And Chidinma, being who she was, had simply called Emeka that evening and asked him directly, "Is there another woman?" He had denied it. She had given him 1 week to tell her the truth himself. She said, "I am not the type to make noise and disgrace people. But I deserve to know what I am in. 1 week, Emeka. Tell me the truth, or I will find it myself." He did not tell her. 2 days after the week expired, Chidinma called him and said she had found Blessing's name through his phone contacts, a backup he had carelessly left accessible, and that she intended to call her. Not out of malice, she said, but because Blessing deserved to know. Emeka panicked. He drove to Chidinma's house that Thursday evening. He told himself he was going to explain. Apologize. Ask her for time. He was not thinking clearly, and when Chidinma opened the door and he saw in her face that she had already made up her mind, something in him broke open in a way he did not know how to manage. They argued. Voices rose. And in the hallway of her home, in a moment that Emeka himself would later struggle to fully reconstruct, he grabbed her by the shoulders and she stumbled backward and hit her head against the edge of the low cabinet near the door. She fell. She did not get up. Emeka stood there for what might have been 30 seconds or 30 minutes, he could not say. And then the panic that had been building for weeks swallowed him whole. He had not meant for this to happen. He knew that with his entire soul. But Chidinma was on the floor and she was not breathing, and all he could think about was Blessing, and his mother in soccer, and the wedding in April, and the way his life would simply cease to exist as he knew it the moment anyone found out. He made a decision. He would not call the police immediately. He would not call anyone. He would leave, collect himself, think it through, and then, and this was the part of himself he would later find the hardest to forgive, he decided he would report it as a discovered crime. A stranger must have broken in. He had come to visit a friend and found her like this. He was just a concerned neighbor. He was just doing his civic duty. He wiped down what he thought he had touched. He straightened his shirt. He drove home. He sat in his car outside his apartment for an hour, rehearsing. And then, the following morning, he walked into the Enugu Central Police Station and reported that his friend Chidinma Ose was dead. The officer who took Emeka's statement that morning was a detective named Kechi Adis, 11 years on the force, 5 of them in the Criminal Investigation Department. She was professional, patient, and exceptionally good at listening not just to what people said, but to the spaces between what they said. She noted several things about Emeka Okafor during that first interview. He was calm, but it was a practice calm, the kind that requires effort to maintain. Most people who discover a dead body, even days later, are still visibly shaken. Emeka's composure was a fraction too deliberate. He was specific about some things, the position of the body, the unlocked back window, the time he said he had arrived, and vague about others, in a pattern that Detective Adis had seen before. People who are telling the truth are randomly inconsistent. People who are lying are inconsistent in a direction. Their vagueness protects them, their specificity serves them. But none of that was enough for an arrest. These were instincts, not evidence. And so the investigation proceeded as a murder inquiry with Emeka listed as a cooperating witness. For 3 days, it looked like his plan might actually hold. The postmortem confirmed blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. The back window of Chidinma's home did show signs of having been opened, though the forensic team noted it was not clear whether it had been forced or simply unlatched from inside. There were no fingerprints that immediately pointed to Emeka. He had been careful. And then they found the mistake. It was not a fingerprint. It was not a DNA trace. It was not a witness who had seen his car outside. It was a phone call. When the forensic team went through Chidinma's phone records, they found a call placed from her phone at 8:47 p.m. on the Thursday evening she died. The call lasted 4 minutes and 31 seconds. The recipient of that call was Emeka Okafor's mobile number. Emeka had told the police he had not spoken to Chidinma in several days before discovering her body. That was the mistake. It was so simple. So avoidable. In all his preparation, the wiped surfaces, the rehearsed story, the carefully constructed timeline, he had forgotten about the phone call. He had not thought to mention it, and in not mentioning it, he had created the kind of direct, verifiable contradiction that investigators wait for. When Detective Addis confronted him with the phone record in the second interview, Emeka tried to adjust his story. He said he had forgotten about the call. He said it was brief, insignificant. She had called to ask about a mutual friend. He said it had slipped his mind. But the call had lasted 4.5 minutes. And when they pulled the cell tower data, it confirmed that Emeka's phone had been in the Uwani district, the same area as Chidinma's home, at the time of the call and for more than an hour afterward. He had placed himself at the scene. The rest of the evidence, once investigators knew where to look, came together with terrible efficiency. A neighbor 2 houses down remembered seeing a Toyota Corolla parked near Chidinma's compound that Thursday evening. The specific scuff pattern on the cabinet in the hallway matched the type of impact consistent with a fall rather than a blow, which aligned with an altercation rather than a premeditated attack. And when detectives looked more carefully at Emeka's life, they found Blessing in Lagos, who told them, through tears, that Emeka had called her that same Thursday night and seemed distracted and strange, and that she had thought nothing of it at the time. By day 6, they had enough. And Emeka Okafor, who had walked into that police station to report a crime, walked out of it charged with causing it. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood where Chidinma Ose had lived and worked and cooked and laughed tried to find its way back to something like ordinary life. Ada, her younger sister, stayed in Enugu for almost a month after the arrest. She told a journalist who covered the case that what she found hardest was not the anger, though there was plenty of that, but the grief of understanding. Because understanding meant accepting that the person who had taken her sister was not a monster who had come in from the outside. He was someone Chidinma had trusted. Someone she had cooked for. Someone she had given a week to tell the truth, because she believed, until she could no longer afford to, that people were capable of honesty when you gave them the space for it. Chidinma had not been wrong to believe that. She had simply trusted it in the wrong person at the wrong time. And Emeka Okafor, who had not woken up that Thursday morning intending to harm anyone, who had driven to her house with his stomach in knots thinking he could talk his way through it, who had stood in her hallway afterward and made a series of terrible decisions in the grip of terror, Emeka would have to live the rest of his life knowing that the one decision that could have saved him was the first one. Not the cover-up. Not the report. The truth. Simply the truth, told to Blessing, told to Chidinma, told to himself, months before any of this began. Small decisions do not feel like the turning points they are when you make them. A lie that seems protective. A secret that seems manageable. A conversation you keep postponing because the timing never feels right. But time does not wait for the right moment to call in what is owed. Emeka's one mistake was the phone call he forgot to account for. But the real mistake, the one that set everything in motion, was the life he had chosen to build in the dark, where he thought no one was looking. In the end, the truth did not need to be found. It had been sitting in a phone record all along, waiting patiently for someone to ask the right question. Always, always, it is the small things. Thank you for watching Stories by the King. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of something you have been meaning to face, let that feeling mean something. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. Until next time, make good decisions. Make them early. And make them in the light.